Welcome to PahrooZings, Appraisers on Purpose. In this season, we journey through the realm of technology and connect with valuation and data analysis experts who are at the forefront of industry transformation. We dive deep into how technology is redefining asset analysis, identifying trends, and enhancing professional valuation skill sets. Join us as we meet with leading minds to discuss the revolutionary intersection of technology and traditional processes with our host, real estate investor, entrepreneur, and chief appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Well, greetings. So great to reconnect. Thanks for joining us once again for another fascinating, insightful episode of PahrooZings, the Power of Values. Definitely take one action right now, and that is like this podcast. We are so grateful for all of the community support and the wonderful outpouring, not only encouragement, feedback. Thank you, Miles, and thank you, Jenny. There are just some wonderful conversations that have come about from people gaining some perspective and insight from the generous sharing of peers. Today will be no different. I am thoroughly excited to welcome Keith Wolf with us. Keith, we always have our opening question. So were you born this way, or how did you get into the profession?
Well, Michael, I hate to admit it, but like Lady Gaga, I think I was born this way.
Way to go, Keith. I love it. That's fantastic. Tell us about it.
Well, it's really a strange story. So when I was younger, growing up, we lived in a coach house on the back of my grandparents' lot.
Keith, for everybody else that doesn't know that, because, spend some time around Chicago, what is a coach house?
It's an accessory dwelling unit.
It's an ADU? Oh, my goodness.
Yes, it was.
Where exactly does it fit in physical space? So you said it's a coach house.
It's on the back of the lot. So there's a Chicago-style bungalow on the front of the lot. Yep. And there's a little cottage on the back of the lot. And it's no bigger than a two-car garage.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. Love it.
And this is 1958.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they've been around for a while. So then as I progressed through my adolescent period, I like to build things. Okay, was in the trades from as soon as I turned a teenager, I was in the trades because I was I was my grandfather's laborer. So typical back then, child labor. Those laws weren't in place really. Yeah,
those laws were there for a reason. Get up and get some work done, boy. I mean, that's not like my household. I'm not sure about yours.
So I always had an interest in building construction, and that just graduated into the housing sector. And then I went to junior college, and I took every course imaginable, trying to figure out what direction my life was going to take me, whether it was like pre-law or art or computer science or building constructions or surveying. And nothing really lit my hair on fire. And all of a sudden, I took a course in real estate, and that was it. But wow. I'm not the salesman type. I can't hard sell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the appraisal profession struck me really, really strong because when I looked at the property management sector, I said, "There's no way on God's green earth I want to be a glorified accountant in property management." Not happening.
I love it.
Yeah. So like I said, I was born this way. It was a natural fit. I got to be outside, got to do what I wanted to do, was in control of my destiny. Sometimes that destiny was good, sometimes it wasn't. But you know what? You learn through the school of hard knocks of what to do and what not to do.
No, that's true. That is definitely true. Wow. So you take a course, you get exposed to this, you decide you want to go in that way. You don't want to be a glorified accountant heading into property management. So what was it like back when you first started in the appraisal and valuation space?
Ooh, we're going back a ways because that was back when the Appraisal Institute was the American Institute of Real Estate Appraisers.
Oh, all right.
Okay, and they were part of the National Association of Realtors. Okay, so back then you basically had three paths.
Mm-hmm.
You could go through the American. I'm having a brain skip. That's been so long. You go through the Appraisal Institute through NAR now, or you go through Society of Real Estate Appraisers, or you could go through the IFA. Okay.
Yes.
And I had made the decision that I wanted to be part of the largest, most powerful lobbying group in the real estate profession. So
Yes.
I went the American Institute of Real Estate Appraisers direction because they were part of NAR.
Mhm.
But also back then, in order to be part of the Society of Real Estate Appraisers, you had to work for a lender. You couldn't be an independent.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't work for a lender. Okay. And then the third option was the IFA. And that was a great organization. Had lots of friends that were members of it and inventors, but I went the lobbyist power route through the National Association of Realtors, and now I'm a member of ARP. So now I'm still in the most powerful lobbyist group out there.
Fantastic. That's amazing. So you decided to join that. And what was it like joining back then?
Oh, well, it was a good old boys network.
Yeah.
Okay. You didn't really need to know anybody. Okay.
Sure.
But it really was probably the only education source out there back then.
I see.
Okay. I mean, it pretty much dominated. I mean, Society used AI's courses, IFA used their courses. So there really weren't, a lot of alternative courses to take. And again, if you did use those, go to the other organizations, they were using, American Institute of Real Estate Appraisers textbooks.
Got it.
So it seemed like a good fit. So it was interesting back then. Is you go in as a candidate, you pay your dues as a candidate, you take all your courses.
Yes.
And then you go through 3 years of submitting sample appraisal reports to get that 3 years of credit. Okay. Finish all your coursework up, and then you write, your designation report. And hang on here a second, real quick.
Yeah. Tell me you've got one.
I still have a copy of it in here.
Oh, that's impressive.
So here it is.
Look at that. Oh, how thick is that thing?
That is a demonstration appraisal report for your RM designation through the American Institute of Real Estate Appraisers.
Yes.
And I wrote it in 1988.
Wow.
And let's see, how many pages is this thing?
It looks thick.
It is 240 pages.
Keith, I would have to say, for anyone who's ever thought about becoming a book publisher, that's about as close as you're going to become. 240 pages written from front to back. I don't know that's going to be a big seller on Amazon, but nice job.
Remember those days?
Oh, look at that.
Taking a photo and pasting it in your report to send it in?
That is literally using film, friends who don't know what that's all about. Cameras that actually had film in it. You had to then go and take it, get developed by somebody else, and then get it back and hope that the photo came out okay.
Yep, so you don't have to go back out there and redo it. Yep. So back then, though, you had to prove, you had to prove 3 forms of depreciation, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky enough, you're familiar with Bartlett, Illinois.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there is a tract subdivision out there that had split 4-year homes or raised ranches, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. With
2-car garages and 1-car garages.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I was lucky enough to be able to use true academic match pair adjustments.
Wow.
Okay, extracting adjustments out of the marketplace. Plus, I was able to show how there was obsolescence in the 2-car versus the 1-car and prove it through depreciated cost new and an income approach to value. So I got lucky.
Oh, my goodness. That's a course in and of itself right there, Keith. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but back then, part of the American Institute of Real Estate Appraisers, that's what you had to do to earn your RM designation.
Wow, that's impressive. That is, as they would say, sharpening the saw. And really, getting your chops in order. That's some impressive accomplishments.
Well, you've got your MAI, right?
I do. But you and I both know that not everybody invests as much time or effort in developing their professional knowledge.
Yeah, but you had to do something similar to get that MAI, and you had to take an exam.
I did. Yeah. I did take. That was a brutal exam. That was harder than taking the LSAT, I think. But you are correct.
Yeah,
that was quite an undertaking.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. After being in this business since 1981, I'm not sure I could pass some of the exams they have out now. I'd probably have to start from scratch and retake all the courses and study for months to be able to sit for these exams.
Yes, I would say, you and I have some similarities because you also spent some time in brokerage. And that was through investing and then brokerage, that's how I got into appraisal. So the front end of appraisal, the first, I don't know, percentage of it was not difficult because I'd already been exposed to it and was active in the marketplace. But I will, the advanced education or the qualifying, the high level coursework that's come out in the last number of years, those are tough courses. Those are really tough courses.
Yeah. So some of those quantitative courses are really difficult. And actually, you're reminding me of the brokerage thing. Okay.
Yeah.
The real reason why I became an appraiser is because
Why is that?
I wanted to rehab house. And I felt if I didn't understand the as is and the repaired value, then why would I even attempt to rehab a house?
Keith, you have summed up my pathway into the profession. That is phenomenal. Tell me a little bit more about when did you decide to go get your broker's license?
Oh, I got that in 1981.
So you got that right about the same time you got into appraisal?
Yeah, exact same time. Went down the same path. Remember, I was taking all those courses at the junior college trying to figure out what to do. And I say, if I'm going to be an appraiser, I got to have access to the data. If I'm going to have access to data, I've got to be a realtor. Okay.
Yep.
But I need to be able to, understand their language.
Got it.
Okay. So kind of why I went down that data science path later in my life, because I needed to understand their language, because it's a different language than what we use as an appraiser.
That's a very, very good point. So what was it like back in that time frame, back in the 80s? I mean, to help people gain some perspective of how this builds into the diverse and impactful career you've had. Here you are, you come in, you want to understand their language, you want to get hands-on experience. What better way to do it than to understand those that are actually doing the transactions? And did you spend equal amounts of time doing brokerage and appraisal, or was it primarily appraising and some brokerage?
Out of the gate, it was all appraisal work. Okay. So I did 7 years worth of field variety work before I would even think about opening my own shop. So basically 7 years of mentorship, field variety mentorship, just understanding the dynamics of the process. Okay, it's complicated. Okay.
Yes.
And then I got this blind opportunity. It was actually a blind call from an underwriter at a local bank. And I thought that they were calling to ask about a report.
Tell me more, Keith.
They offered me a job.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Once you realized that they weren't calling about an assignment that you'd recently worked on.
That's right. They offered me a job to come work for them, to be their staff appraiser, to handle all of their FHA appraisal.
Oh, okay.
So
fascinating.
Yeah, so I cut a deal with them, went and did that, and then a year later, Household International, Household Bank, Household Mortgage, acquired them.
Oh, fascinating.
So that launched me into the national review space, looking at appraisals across the country for Household, and quickly realizing I had no clue what I was doing.
We've all had some of those.
None whatsoever. I'm looking at appraisals in California and Oregon and New York and Florida and Alaska.
Yes.
And with no clue whatsoever. Okay. So next thing I know, I'm buying every possible textbook and workbook I can from the National Association of Review Appraisers and Underwriters.
Oh, I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Yeah. I don't have those books anymore. I did get rid of those. I sent them to the local library. Okay. But if anybody wants to know where all these initial 10%, 50%, 20%, 1 mile, 6 month, all those guidelines came from, that came from that organization. It didn't come from the GSCs like everybody thinks. It came from the National Association of Review Appraisers and Underwriters.
Oh, that's fascinating.
But also at that time, MGIC actually had training videos on VHS. Yeah, on VHS.
Wow.
That taught underwriters, review appraisers how to evaluate like the neighborhood, cost approach, income approach, sales comparison approach. Okay, so off of that at Household, then I built training programs. So because all the underwriters were just as clueless as I was. They didn't know how to underwrite the collateral in all these different parts of the country either. Okay, because if you think about it, back then, lending was very regionalized. So if you were a review appraiser for a bank, you knew the market because you were in that market.
Very much so.
But back in 87, 88, Okay, that's when correspondent lending became really, really large, and mortgage brokers and
Yes.
mortgage bankers. And now all of a sudden,
Yes.
all these loan transactions started to become fungible across the country to different lenders that were buying mortgages all over the place, not just in their regionalized area. So that gave me the opportunity to see the appraisal process from the lender's perspective. So 7 years of field variety, and then I did 7 years of mortgage lending appraisal work. Okay? And then Household, in their infinite wisdom, back in 1994, okay, when the mortgage market first hit its $1 trillion, benchmark,
Yes.
Household hedged interest rates the wrong way and blew the company up. They had
Is that what that blew? I remember them blowing up, but I didn't know the inside story.
Yeah, they hedged interest rates the wrong way. Okay.
Oh, wow.
They had to sell the banks, sell the entire mortgage portfolio to cover the losses.
Wow.
Okay, so myself and a couple thousand other people all got the pink slip. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I landed at Berkeley Federal Bank and Trust in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Sounds terrible thinking that we're going into a Chicago winter right now. I apologize.
Yeah, it was brutal. Going down there, 80 degrees on the beach because they were.
Oh, you poor thing.
Well, see, Berkeley Federal Bank and Trust, they're out of New Jersey, but their headquarters were West Palm Beach, Florida.
So the owner clearly knew where they wanted to spend their winters.
Well, the Berkeley Federal Bank and Trust, okay, soon became Aquin Financial Service.
I was just going to say, when you said the name the second time, I'm like, they had a federal charter. Somebody picked them up.
Yeah, well, Bill Irby bought them. They're a failed thrift that came out of the RTC, okay? Yeah. And it had nothing but bad loans, and that's where he perfected the ability to turn a bad loan into a performing loan. And I went down there to start up his appraisal group for his subprime lending division.
Oh, I got it. Wow.
So subprime lending's been around for quite a while, okay?
Yes.
A lot longer than people realize. And subprime lending actually crashed for the first time in 1998.
I actually remember that.
Yeah.
The 1998 piece of it.
Yeah. And then it came back with a vengeance, and we know what happened after that. Okay?
Yes.
So now that gave me 4 to 5 years of experience in subprime and acquiring non-performing assets in the residential and the small commercial environment. Okay, so
yes,
a lot of them were foreclosures. What most people call them, scratch and dent, whatever you want to call them. So that's when you learn that the real estate valuation process is actually really, really important, because now you just became an equity lender.
Yes,
because that borrower is not paying the debt.
No.
Okay, so and that's where I learned how to really understand the as-is versus repaired value scenario, because we had to look at portfolios and determine, are we going to fix this or are we going to let somebody else deal with the headache? Okay,
got it.
But we also used auctions quite a bit, so we got to understand the auction market really well and how that worked. And I always used to joke around and say that at Household I learned how to process re-engineer.
Okay.
At Aquin I learned how to make money.
There's a big difference. You want to explain the difference for those people that didn't pick up on that important subtlety?
Well, big banks are all about process re-engineering and unit costs and shaving 10% off the budget and letting people go. Okay, when you work for a firm like Aquin, it's how do we understand the marketplace better than everybody else? Leverage that expertise and rip your competition's eyes out. Okay. It's all about making money, okay? But Aquin was also a Wall Street firm, so Saturdays were our casual days.
Oh, I like that. That's going to shock some people's ears to hear that Saturday
was the casual day. We had credit committee meetings on Sundays. We recognized 3 holidays: Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the 4th of July.
Wow.
Nothing else. Okay.
Goodness.
We worked from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. Okay. So, and when people say that when you go to work for a very, very aggressive Wall Street firm, that is really what their life is like. Okay. The average tenure for an employee at Aquin was 3 to 4 years, and it primarily because of burnout. Okay.
Absolutely.
And we always used to say that when we were hired, there was a turkey baster in the back of your neck, and when you're done, it just pops.
What a visual.
So,
Oh my goodness.
okay, but so then in '98, when subprime crashed, we had a life event that we needed to come back to Chicago.
Okay.
So Aquin was for as tough as they were to work for, they were actually a great company because because of that life event, they actually relocated me back to Chicago.
I really admire that.
Okay. And then I continued to work for them for another year until their subprime business really melted down. Okay.
Yep.
And that's when I opened up my own real estate brokerage, managing and valuing distressed properties for lenders, specialty loan servicers, hedge funds, not only locally, but across the country.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
fascinating.
So we did that for 14 years. So I got to rehab houses on everybody else's dime.
That's phenomenal. And you had used your experience around the whole loan to own role to gain the understanding of when is the property worth taking on and when is that one just a dog with fleas and let that baby go roam somewhere else.
Yeah, and here's the real interesting part about that. What I learned, okay, is you hear all these stories about these investors that got rich quick and they made thousands of dollars on this property. So
sure.
What it boils down to is on average, okay, if you're right, you'll make money. Okay. If on average you're right and you're right a lot, you'll make a lot of money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But that goes the other way. On average, if you're wrong, you lose money. And on average, if you're wrong a lot, you'll lose a lot of money. Okay.
Very much.
Okay. And when the market turned in that rehab space, okay, and I'll tell you exactly when it turned. It turned when the Obama administration took all the foreclosed properties and pushed them into HARP. Okay.
HARP. Yeah, bringing back some acronyms.
That's right. Okay. So now everything that was a potential foreclosure was a short sale. So now the loan servicer lost control of the transaction, and now the consumer was in control of their own destiny. But that then created all of these short sale attorneys. So these are short sale attorneys will then negotiate a short tail and then turn around and flip it to their stabled investors that would buy them.
Yes.
Okay. So it just arbitraged the money in a different way. Just moved it around. Okay. But what I learned from back in those days was that I could make just as much money off of the real estate commission as I could buy it and rehab in the house, and I didn't have any of the liability.
That's a big one. A lot of people don't ever get to that level of understanding, Keith, about the risk-adjusted returns.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the as-is repair analysis that I was doing for the bank and getting paid that 3 to 4% real estate commission, that if I would have been hired by that special loan servicer, I would have got maybe $300 for the appraisal report, okay, versus $4,000 commission.
I like the sound of the latter versus the former.
So it was just a good business model, and then eventually I just got burnt out on it. Remember that turkey baster concept? Okay?
Yes.
I just got tired of evicting people for the bank that were just trying to get their kids through school and going out there when the papers were being served, only to discover that they had all of these canceled checks proving that they were paying the rent to the investor, and the investor just wasn't paying the mortgage.
Wow.
That's a lot more frequent than some people may realize.
That's quite a spotlight that most people are not aware of.
Yeah, and the worst part about it, if that rental was being subsidized through some type of city, county, or state program.
Yes.
Even though that tenant is paying their rent on time, and even though the state is giving that landlord the subsidy on time, they're still not making their mortgage payment. But because of the contractual obligation, the government agency still pays.
Oh, goodness. Wow. Did not know that.
I don't know if they ever changed that, but back then that was in place. So I left that business in 2016, went back onto the appraisal side of it, and the rest is history.
Yeah. One of the interesting experiences you've had that a lot of people have not had is both being a broker and a valuer, and then specifically getting really into the as is and as repaired piece. I mean, you've touched on what I consider the golden egg that a lot of people don't take the time to warm up, if you will, to keep that baby till it hatches, and that is using the information that you have to not just serve clients, but to also use some of your spare time to create some income and maybe even build wealth. What was it that you learned early on around valuing as is and as repaired that you've probably come to see that most people don't understand these days?
Don't pay attention to cost does not equal value. Okay, there are certain items where the cost is only going to give you a dollar for dollar return. Okay, yes. Putting on a new roof, you need a roof. Okay, yep. But what'll happen is you'll only get a dollar for dollar back, but the discount is greater because someone's got to deal with the aggravation and the hassle. Okay.
Yes.
But then if you put in new bathrooms or kitchens or flooring or lighting, okay, is you will get more than it costs you there. And what's really yes. interesting is the higher quality product you put in, that return actually can quadruple versus putting in the basic. Okay? But you need to be careful because you can over improve. Okay. The other thing I learned is you just got to get out of the box. Okay. And now I'll give you my first house that I ever bought that I ever dove into. Okay. And it was in Benson, Illinois. And yes. I was a kid, probably 3 years into the profession, and it was on a double lot. Okay.
Ooh. Okay.
And the house, okay, was on the front. It was a corner. The house was on the front corner, and then the other lot behind it was vacant. So,
got it.
So what I wanted to do was go in and re-subdivide the lot to be different because because if they're configured differently, I could get two larger houses on them.
Yeah, basically, were you planning on keeping the house or just literally cutting the lot like the way you would cut a piece of paper with a pair of scissors?
That was what I wanted to do, but then I was going to build new, two new houses.
Yes. Okay.
So we're in the property trying to assess it, and we're gutting the basement, and I discover like a 4-inch crack in the foundation wall that was hidden. Now this is way before any disclosure laws. Everything was as is way before. Yep. Okay. So the only way to find out is you had to rip the paneling off in the basement to find it. Okay.
Of course.
And then I hear this like spraying noise, and I go spraying. What the hell is that? Yeah. So,
oh no.
So I walk over by the electrical panel, and the sump pump hose split and spraying water all over the electrical panel. It's great. This is going to be fun.
Fantastic.
So being the ethical trooper that I am, and following the narrow-mindedness of what I was taught in the textbooks, okay?
Yes.
I explore every possible way to salvage this scenario, okay?
Yes.
At the end of the day, even with subdividing the lots and splitting them, I was going to lose $35,000 because of all the issues I was going to have, okay? So dang. I breached the contract, walk away. I walked away for my $2,000. Walked away.
That was not an insignificant sum of money back then, just for those people to give them a sense of what we're talking about here.
So, but the property always intrigued me, okay? So I drive by it once in a while. And like a month later, I'd drive by it, and I saw somebody bought it for the same price I had it on a contract for. But really? Now he had a trailer on, a mobile camper. And he was running extension cords from the spraying fuse box to his camper. And he was, back then, it was an owner-occupied loan. He was living there in the camper, right?
He was living there.
Okay, but in a camper.
Wow.
And then I go back a month later, okay. He's still living there. 6 months later, I go back there, and there's 2 brand new houses.
Really?
Well, eventually that house burned down from the electrical brain on it. And he took his insurance claim, took his insurance money, didn't bother re-subdividing lots. He just slapped up 2 raised ranches, brand new raised ranches on either one of the houses, and sold them for $1.50 a piece.
Wow.
So you need to get outside the box. So when you're looking at your highest and best use analysis, you really need to explore all of the different options. Now, I'm not telling you to go and do what this guy did, because it was clearly...
Of course. Yeah.
But that's not that atypical of the fix and flip investors out there today that will say they made oodles of money on this deal, because they might have done something like that.
Yeah.
They saw an opportunity and they knew how to leverage the opportunity. They knew how to leverage the system, whether it was the insurance company or the lending practices, to do what they did, and ended up making a good profit.
Are you running a real estate firm? Are you looking to grow your firm, streamline your operations, or prepare for an exit? Don't miss this opportunity to work with Michael to figure out your business pathway to massive success. With a growth system for business that leverages opportunities and removes obstacles that Michael has successfully taught to thousands of entrepreneurs globally. Michael's guidance will help turn aspirations into reality. Michael is a renowned figure in the real estate and business coaching worlds. As one of only 5 individuals worldwide for Entrepreneurs Organization, Michael serves a dual role, training business owner participants in the EO Accelerator program, while also upskilling EO members' impact and capacity to lead multi-million-dollar businesses. Get more out of your business. In working with Michael, you can achieve the growth, profitability, and life balance you desire. With Michael, it's not just about business growth. It's about redefining your purpose for business and for your life. If you are interested in working with Michael, contact him via his LinkedIn profile or email him at michaelh@pahroo.com. And now back to part 2 of the episode, where we explore new technology trends that will shape the world of real estate appraisal for years to come.
That's something else. That's quite a learning experience early on. And how else were you able to continue to utilize your valuation skills to really support your, buying and rehabilitating properties?
Okay. Well, we always start with the as repaired value. Okay. And then we have our risk reward. We have our profit margin. We have our overhead, and we have our repairs. Okay. And that gets me to what I would be willing to pay. And then I cut it by 10%.
Smart move. There's always going to be unexpected things.
You take it or leave it. And you can't let it be emotional. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. Okay. And if they take it after 10% cut, then you got to second guess yourself and say, okay, what aren't they telling me about this place?
Yeah. That's a very, very good point. Was there any particular property type or property locations you like to focus, or were you just kind of take the opportunities as they showed up? I mean, one of those interesting ways. I mean, you developed a lot of skill over time, value in properties.
Opportunistic. Okay. If it showed up, it was meant to be. If it didn't show up, it wasn't meant to be.
I like that. Did you stay in the single family space, or did you get involved in the Fannie Mae conforming 2 to 4 flat kind of stuff? 2 to 4 units? If you get in commercial and mixed use or apartment buildings?
I've stayed in the single family space just because they're easier to flip.
A lot easier. A lot more buyers.
And right now, I'd love to have some of those properties back in this environment.
Oh, tell me about it. Absolutely. Have some of those back now. Speaking of that experience that you had and how that's continued to inform you in your career, what were some of the things that you learned because you took the time to learn the language of brokers as opposed to just staying on the appraisal side of the equation?
Well, it wasn't only the language of brokers, but it was being able to relate to them as a realtor that sold properties and understands the process. And the real critical thing about being a broker, this might be hard for some, but when you're a real estate broker, you have this huge network. Okay.
Yes.
You're really not selling the house. You're selling yourself through that network. Okay. So realtors don't make their money when they sell their house. Realtors make money by building a network. Okay.
Yeah.
And a good realtor doesn't earn their commission until the deal closes. So the most critical piece you need to understand as a realtor is what happens from the date that property goes under contract and the closing, and being able to manage all the different parties, the appraiser, the home inspector, the title company, the attorneys, the lenders.
Yes.
You need to be able to manage that entire process. You're kind of like a air traffic controller. You need to navigate all of them to get to the closing table, because indirectly every one of them is trying to blow your deal up.
Yes.
Even they may not admit it, they really are. Okay. So as a realtor, you don't make any money until the deal closes. Okay.
Yes.
But if you're a realtor, the value that you bring to the table is the money you spend to build your brand. Pahroo Appraisals, you built a brand.
Yes, very much so. How did that change the way you spoke to them when you were calling in a real estate appraisal capacity?
Oh, much more respectful. Okay. No attitude, humble,
Yep.
If you're trying to get information, the last thing you want to do is be egotistical.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that one. Makes a huge difference. I mean, they have the keys to the kingdom. I mean, they see more properties with the client sometimes in a day or a weekend, and some people might see in a week or a month.
Yeah, you're right. And the residential real estate market is actually pretty interesting, because it is, the data is so ubiquitous now. Okay.
Yes.
Borrowers have a better understanding of what their house is worth than we might give them credit for.
Yes.
Okay. And as a realtor, if the borrower is high, you say, well, yeah, we can start there. Okay, but we're going to end up walking it down. So now you have a choice. You can start really, really high, and it can go stale, and everybody thinks there's something wrong with it because they haven't sold. Or you can price it a little bit low, attract a lot of activity, maybe get into a bidding war, and price it up over what you thought it might sell for. Regretfully, most buyers do the high thing and walk it down instead of doing the low thing and let them, because the market will self-correct. If it's overpriced, it'll bring it down. If it's underpriced, it'll bring it up. The market will always overcorrect, but there's a caveat to that. And that caveat is, as long as your realtor is not sandbagging you and having his investor buddies buy it from you.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. And the research has since seems to come out and shows, generally speaking, walking it down, you actually end up getting less money, in a isolated scenario than pricing it competitively or just slightly below the market to create a bit of a frenzy or fury, if you will.
That's right. So,
yeah, that is a phenomenal piece. You also talked about non-performing assets. I think that's one thing that my experience, as an owner and investor, and having been a banker as well, I don't find that most people in valuation really understand that huge space. Now, granted, we saw the great financial crisis, and it was, many times larger than it historically is. But nonetheless, even in the best of markets, there's always somewhere between as low as a half and as much as 1.5% of the market is in some form of distress, which boggles most people's minds. But taking that for what it is, and you having had the opportunity to be at Aquin and being around that, what did you really take away from that whole experience of the non-performing valuation? Because as is and as repaired is one piece, but when you're in the middle of that whole call it tranche, from one end to the other, not tranches in a line of securities, it's quite an undertaking.
Okay, so a couple takeaways from that question. First, I'm glad you called it a financial instrument crash. A lot of people don't realize that Great Recession was not a housing crash. That was a financial instrument crash from all the exotic mortgages that were out there. Now, the net effect or the sector that we felt all that pain was in housing, okay?
Yes.
Because it created such a huge non-distressed loan environment. Now, all of a sudden, you had this massive oversupply of housing with financial instrument distress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I mean, it had negative amortizing arms. You had an 80-20 mortgages, okay, where people were financing the MI. Okay? You had mortgages that were at 110%. Okay? You had the liar loans, you had the investor loans. It was just a mess. And then when you got on the credit risk transfer side, then you had the CDOs and all the crazy tranches, and you had all the automated tools and the underwriting that everybody figured out how to get. It was just a mess. Okay.
Yes.
And it crashed and burned. Okay. So my biggest takeaway though from that non-performing business, okay, is the transactions that you lost the most money on. Okay. They were just bad transactions from the beginning. There was something weird about that property to start with that you couldn't recover from no matter what scenario you were under. Okay. And what was really strange is not only was that property weird, but that borrower did something really weird with their loan too. So it was a combination of a strange loan structure and a strange property. And when they both came together, that was like, yep, that's going to auction. We're We're not going anywhere near that property.
Oh, yeah. It's a fascinating insight, and one that clearly you just can't find. There's no amount of data analytics that are going to give you that indication on the front.
No, it's a white elephant.
Yeah, especially back then. I mean, there was just no chance that you're going to put those two pieces together and form a puzzle that's easily viewed.
Yeah. It was a learning experience. Okay. And in the data science world, they call it housing crash an out of sample event, meaning there's no data. You have no data to forecast or predict or source of truth what could happen in the future.
Yes.
So COVID is also an out of sample event.
Is that how I appropriately hear some people make reference to black swan events?
That's probably the same concept. Black swan.
Yeah.
Out of sample.
Yeah. Out of sample. Yeah. No, that is quite an interesting perspective. You mentioned auctions in there as well. Did you have any opportunities to participate in auction purchases for properties?
Every quarter for 4 years.
Which counties?
Nationwide.
See, that's something that most people don't realize is another fact. Now, granted, it's a much greater transparency now than back when you were participating in them. But holy cow, that was an interesting treasure trove.
So we ran one experiment, a nationwide auction with 3 different auction companies. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it actually was a structured experiment because remember, we owned the property because we're an equity lender.
Yes.
We owned it, so we could do whatever we wanted to. Okay. So what we did is we did a series of sealed bids, open auctions, and on sites.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. And so what we did is we ran them like a week apart, and then we would cherry pick from the 3 events the best price. Okay, but what that gave us the opportunity. It told us where the dogs were. Okay, yes. so then we finaled all the dogs into one last auction where there was no reserve price, meaning we don't give a shit what you offer. You're taking it.
Just get it. Take it, please. Get it off our hands.
Get it out of here. Okay. So, but what we learned is now think about this in a bigger perspective. Okay, the MLS system is nothing more but an auction site. Mm-hmm. That's all an auction is. Accelerated marketing.
Yes.
Okay. So the MLS is an auction site, and it's got all these participants. What the MLS is lacking is a way for buyer and seller to come together online through an auction process to negotiate price. And that could be done very transparently because HUD actually does it in their auction model. Okay. So if buyers and sellers were to come together in the auction environment through the MLS, what we learned through that test was the sealed bid auction reveals the highest price because you end up bidding against yourself.
Interesting.
Okay. So it so in this world of real estate commissions are antitrust or yada 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 yada.
Sure.
In an auction process like that, okay, now the real estate commission is just a component of your offer, and now the winner is the net highest price to the seller. Doesn't matter who gets paid the commission, okay? Because each commission is negotiated individually between the buyer and between the seller and the platform.
That makes good sense. Yeah, it's a fascinating insight there, Keith.
It'll never happen, but it can solve the problem.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, there are some parties that are trying to move in that direction, but slow going. Yeah. Some vested interests standing in the way.
So tell me about your most adventuresome experience in your rehab environment. I'm sure you've got a few.
Oh, yes. The favorite one. Talk about being knowing what you know, but there's more to know than you realize you needed to know. There was an area closer towards where you've lived that I won't name because it was not a pleasant experience, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But it turns out that this particular municipality requires an inspection upon sale of the property. And I bought the property at auction. So technically speaking, an acquaintance of mine was active in the auction space. and they're very active. So they would go in Cook County. They'd successfully bid on a lot of properties, and they would flip the certs. And I worked with them regularly, so I was quite familiar with the process. But in this particular property, I had actually bought the house, paid them a premium over their auction price, which was still very fair when you talked about as is and as repaired. And then in the process, I had already identified a seller and sold the property. And I had this well-meaning person just trying to do their job coming to tell me that I couldn't actually close on the home because I hadn't had a property inspection. My response was, I'm selling the home. I'm closing to the title company. I don't know what you're talking about. And it was just such an important kick in the shins of, man, just when you think you've done this a lot and you really know what's going on, Heath, there's always something else to learn.
Yeah. I feel your pain. I coined those areas Teamster suburbs.
Well, that's a nice way to put it.
There's always someone looking for a check.
Yeah,
that's all it really is. They just want to check.
Oh man, that's a good one. That's phenomenal. Wow. So one of the things I appreciate that you touched on was the whole approach of really understanding things from the inside out, as opposed to just kind of rolling with it. And you even mentioned the importance of being informed from a data science standpoint. You want to share a little bit about how that has contributed to both your understanding as well as the work that you've done later in your career?
Sure. So from the beginning, back in 1981, regression modeling and data analytics has always intrigued me. The reality of it, though, that until 2012, it just wasn't efficient to do any of that. Okay,
Yeah.
You didn't have the computing power. The data wasn't available. It was just way too inefficient. Now that's changed. Okay, now the tools and the data are as available as fast food restaurants going down the highway. Okay, it's all over the place. Okay, so I started taking all the courses that the Appraisal Institute had in that space: statistics, analysis, spreadsheets. Okay, and you and I were both in that quantitative analysis course that I piloted in Chicago. Yeah. And the catalyst to that, when I spoke to the instructor, during one of the breaks, and he told me, yeah, you probably don't want to use any adjustments in a regression model in any type of form appraisal report. Okay. And I really didn't quite understand what he meant. Okay. So I said, well, I better dig deeper into this. Okay. And that's what got me into this data science program at Elmhurst College, which is brand new. Okay. There were two, colleges, university that offered those programs back then, and this was 2014 and 15 maybe, and it was DePaul University and Elmhurst College. Mm-hmm. DePaul's class you had to go on campus. Elmhurst course you could do online. I was already an alum for the Elmhurst course, so I went the online version. Okay, sure. But that's when I started learning about, confounding variables. Okay. And basically, we always ask ourselves, well, what comes first? GLA, bathrooms, bedrooms, or total rooms? Because they're so connected. Okay.
Yep.
Well, if you run a correlation matrix, you'll see that GLA is like 36%, bedrooms are like 24, baths are like 25. Total rooms are like 38. Well, you add that up, it's over 100. Okay, but that's demonstrating the collinearity in all the data points and how it's so hard to split them apart. Okay, and that's what the instructor for the AI course meant is when you run a regression model, there's so much collinearity between all the variables, you can't translate those and put them in an appraisal report because you will get the wrong answer every single freaking time.
Yes.
Okay. So that in the Elmer's College course then, brought me into this variable things. And now all of a sudden I learned that there's a collider variable and there's a blocking variable. So, and a collider variable is where two things crash and make something. List price collides with marketing time to create sale price. Okay.
Yes.
So now you've got GLA, bedrooms, baths, and total rooms that all collide together to create sale price. Okay.
Yes.
But inside those four variables, they're each a blocker for each other because you don't know which one came first. Okay. And what's really strange, and I can't prove this other than logically, but if you look at most zoning ordinances, the zoning ordinances are designed to not stress municipal services, water, sewer, okay, sanitation plants.
Yes.
Okay. And if you look in the rural areas, when they perk out the soil, they're also designed to not stress what the natural environment can handle. And in both those scenarios, bathrooms is the most important. So maybe bathrooms come first. But I don't know how to prove it.
Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. What does they say? Something to chew on, as we would say back in the South.
Exactly. But then it dovetails into highest and best use as improved. Okay, because you look at those zoning ordinances. Well, it's this size lot can support this size house, but this size house can support this number of bathrooms. That number of bathrooms can support that number of bedrooms.
Yes.
So, but that's how tightly wound it is. So it actually does start with highest and best use and filters down through.
Yes. Yeah. That's man. For those that were looking for something to really twist their brain on, Keith is definitely delivering for you here. Get your online degree there, master's over at Elmhurst College. So, Keith, you also, because of your interest in data science and continuing to advance the profession, you've had some phenomenal roles more recently. What to kind of give people a sense of what's possible for them if they continue to invest in themselves and develop their professional ability. Can you share a little bit about just some of the different, in a big picture level, some of the different projects or roles that you've had that all really started out because you were a field appraiser for 7 years, getting mentored and apprenticed, and 7 more years, and then one thing led to another, and you're doing what you're doing now.
I can say everything I've ever done. Everything.
Not everybody knows you.
It all started as being that field, that boots on the ground appraiser, and as you go through your career, I call it the 7-year itch because mine just broke out to be in 7-year cycles. Okay, I call it the 7-year itch. Okay, in 7 years you start getting bored. You say, "Hey, was there something more to this?" And you expand.
Got it.
Then you become proficient at it, and then 7 years flies by again, and there's got to be more to this.
Yep.
And move on. So for me, it was a stepping stone process. It was nothing I planned. It all just happened. It was all like fate. It just happened. But for the appraiser today, okay, it can be planned. Okay, because if I'm an appraiser today and I go through the old school process, the way that I was trained to get into this industry, I'm pigeonholed.
Yes.
I'm pigeonholed. Okay, but if I expand my educational knowledge and my base and my experience, okay, and you get that data analysis background. You don't have to be a data scientist. You just get that data analysis background. Okay, now I'm no longer pigeonholed. Now I can do other things. And if I get disenchanted with the business, because if I do have that degree in data analytics, then I could go into some other field and still be able to leverage what I learned, because that first 7 years is going to teach me how to be a boots on the ground data researcher, verifying the data, and that's invaluable experience. Okay, so then you just got to step it up, and then it's just depends on what you want to do. What fate is in your way.
That is a great way to put it. Absolutely. like you said, that 7-year and leveraging what you learned. I mean, to your credit, not everyone is willing to take on the additional opportunity to apply the book knowledge. I mean, the book knowledge is, hey, if you go analyze some properties and you come up with some adjustments, it's quite a different thing to say, hey, I see based on the data that this property is mispriced and someone's going to harness some profits. Someone's going to have some net income after they take out all their expenses, holding period, plus purchase, plus rehab and what have you, and really get a sense of, it's one thing to talk about what those numbers are versus actually to work with contractors and brokers and participants in the market and actually harness those results from rehabbing.
So another thing to make it you should bring out here is I'm not a unicorn. Okay. There are a lot of appraisers like yourself and others that have done exactly what I've done and more. Okay. I'd like to say that we're probably looking about maybe 10 or 15% of the profession is a combination realtor broker and has these same experiences. Okay. But again, those were choices they made. And yes. What I used to play soccer with some guys from Ireland all the time. Okay. And they used to say, you've got good luck and you've got bad luck. You create both.
Good point. I like that. Speaking of creating good luck and bad luck, given everything you've experienced and many different things you've been involved in over just a fascinating career, what are you looking ahead to, or what are you optimistic about over the next 3 to 5 years?
I'm actually in a pay it forward mode. Okay. My career is where it is because of the real estate appraisal profession. Okay. And I think that it's a very, very good profession that more appraisers should get into, but I also think they need to have the right set of tools. Okay. We're in a very unique time period right now where there is so much information available to us, it's almost overwhelming. So yes, you need to be able to cipher through all the information, and more importantly, cipher through all of the tools that are being made available to us, so what tool to use when and where and why.
Got it.
Okay. So am I using a framing hammer? I'm using a roofing hammer, or I'm using my trim nailer. Okay. I need to know what tool to use.
Got it. One of the biggest ahas is knowing that there's more than one kind of hammer.
Exactly. Yeah. Go to the hardware store. There's a dozen of them.
Oh my gosh, Keith, that just brings me a quick chuckle. I remember one of the first full rehabs that I did. I brought in a contractor, and I mean, I grew up. I'm relatively handy, but I'm not that handy. I was very good working on automobiles and stuff. Knew nothing about rehabbing until I moved to Chicago and found out I had the complete wrong toolbox, because you can't work on homes with the stuff you work on cars with. I remember this guy showed up and he had 7 different types of saws. I didn't know there were 7 types of saws, Keith.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling when you think about it. Yeah.
So given what you shared there and how your field knowledge really has informed so much of your career, is there anything in particular that you see out, say, in 3 to 5 years that people now could actually start planning for and investing in? Because, 2024 is going to be 2024. I mean, it's going to look a good bit like 2023. It's not going to be a breakout year. I personally, just to go on record, I don't see any interest rate cuts, at least in the first half of the year. We could go the whole year depending on the continued earnings strength and the low employment rate. So with that low unemployment rate being where it's at, I still think it's a great year for those that see a future here. And as you've touched on, I think there's a very bright future. What would you encourage them to really commit their time and their effort on?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for the profession. Okay. I think they need to upgrade their skills. Okay. But regretfully, I threw my magic 8 ball away years ago. I have no idea where we're going to be 3 years from now. Anything can happen that could upset the apple cart.
That's true. There are those those out of sample experiences, as you've touched
You
on.
got that right.
That is that's a contributor to your throwing away the magic 8-ball.
That's right.
Fantastic. Well, Keith, I really appreciate you being our guest here on our PahrooZings podcast. It's always a pleasure to hear informed and insightful perspectives. I want to say thank you so much.
Well, Michael, thanks for the invite. I love the history on the name. That probably was worth the conversation all by itself.
Well, Keith, as we bring this one to a close, we just want to remind everybody, make sure to also, as you heard Keith talk about, pay it forward. We've heard so many great stories of peers mentioning that they didn't know this podcast existed, and a friend of theirs said, oh my goodness, I just listened to this episode. It was insightful. It was funny. It was instructive, whatever it might have been, however it was for them. Do the same. And as you heard Keith say, it's all about paying it forward. We thank you, and until our next episode.
Thank you for joining us in uncovering how technology is reshaping the landscape of real estate valuation and appraisal. Would you do a favor for someone you may never meet to influence a future that is worth building? Please scroll down and like this podcast and share your comments. Stay engaged with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platforms to catch every moment of innovation and expertise shared. Got an idea or a suggestion? Share your thoughts and questions with us. Let's continue to grow together, embracing the tech evolution that is enhancing our industry's effectiveness and efficiency. Until next time, remember, in the fast-evolving world of real estate and technology, being a part of the change is what sets you apart. Keep creating the future by striving for excellence and innovation.